Erol Morkoc is a spokesman for Republicans overseas and joins us now. Good morning to you, Erol.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming on. It's not looking good for your man, is it?
Well, honestly, it's a very bizarre situation. I'm surprised the Democrats have chosen to hang their hat on this. I mean, you're having a situation where basically a secondary source whistleblower, the entire story was blown out of the water as soon as the transcripts were released. We're looking at a situation where people like Joe Biden really are going to try to make the case to the American people in court that Donald Trump needed the Ukrainian government to help them beat him. So it's one of those things where Donald Trump thrives on any media. And anytime you give him media, this only feeds into the narrative that he's been pushing about Joe Biden. And it's going to turn those cameras, it's going to turn those spotlights, unfortunately for the Democratic Party, into a place that they're not really going to benefit from. And Nancy Pelosi knew this. This is why she didn't really want to push for this out of the Mueller report. The same level of guilt we can see in the Mueller report, which to me is none, is out of these kind of phone calls. None.
I have to say, from the moment this story came out, I have to say I was questioning. I've said this before on the show many times, that, you know, a country which most Americans wouldn't even know where they place on a map, and a phone call with a president whose name they probably can't pronounce is not going to perhaps be the smoking gun in terms of getting public attention to this issue. However, if this is on a legal technicality, the smoking gun for the Democrats in the House of Representatives to get this through, even if it is the case, they're not going to get it through the Senate, which has a Republican majority, and they need a 2/3 vote there. That's not going to happen, in which case their aim surely then isn't to get this through and get the president impeached. It is simply to damage him. You think this won't damage him?
I think this won't damage him, and I also think perhaps the Democrat Party is looking at trying to find the lie inside this sort of convoluted situation. Just like President Clinton ended up getting tripped up on not tripped up, he committed perjury, but that wasn't really the
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Right.
Yes.
And that was one of those things. Donald Trump has actually, in a weird way, been sort of a victim of the ills of the past Republican Party, which he wasn't a part of. So they're certainly coming at him at this very abstract, asymmetrical attack angle, and I can sort of see it, but it's just...
I mean, it's not abstract, is it? I mean, this is a man who went on national television during the 2016 presidential campaign and called on the Russians, an enemy power. I mean, they are not an ally to hack into the Democratic Party's computers to get dirt on his rival Hillary Clinton. I mean, the fact that this man is willing to do that on camera, it's hardly a stretch of the imagination. He's willing to do it when he thinks he's having a private phone call and doesn't expect the transcripts to be released. The reality is, I mean, we know an awful lot about what happens behind the scenes in the White House, because there have been so many whistleblowers, because so many working in his White House, some appointed by him, have been so horrified by how Donald Trump goes about things. And perhaps those who thought that, well, they didn't like him as a candidate, but thought, well, as a president he would act in a presidential way, have been horrified to discover he's even worse as president than he was as a candidate. But the reality is, he was, from the notes we've got from this, and the whistleblowers we regard, although he's not identified yet, is regarded to be a very credible figure. The idea that you have an American president who is calling on a foreign power to investigate his rival in a bid to try and damage his prospects in the next election, I mean, that is a crime. I mean, that is that is something that you're not supposed to do as a president. Do you not think even the most staunch Trump supporter might say at this point, hold on a minute, you're putting your own political rivalries ahead of acting in a presidential way as not just our head of government, but our head of state as president of the United States? Will that not damage him with his core support?
Well, I don't think it'll damage him. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a very interesting discussion that hasn't emerged yet, but is about to come. That is Joe Biden's behavior as a vice president in international relations, where he's literally on camera withholding aid in exchange for a change of prosecutor, these kind of things. It's not really what my point is, but the idea that he's now immune from any sort of investigation because he simply declares a candidacy against the person who took his entire administration out of office, that seems like a bit of a stretch. I don't think.
But is there not a rather big difference between? Of course, governments and presidents withhold aid and make threats and bargain with foreign leaders. But when you're doing that in the interest of the United States, that's your job. When you're doing it in the interest of your political prospects, then that's corruption. Those are different things.
I think that his supporters and myself included see the defense of the United States, also including what happened with corruption and pay for play that went on throughout the last I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years of mismanagement the country's been going through. I mean, there's a lot of deep-seated corruption in the U.S. government. And so Donald Trump taking a point to ask about it.
I have to say, I think there is a lot of deep-seated corruption in the American government. I'm not entirely sure that Donald Trump is the person to, in his horrible words, drain the swamp, given that he's up to his eyeballs in it himself. Erol Morkoc, spokesman for Republicans overseas, thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we'll get